But if you invest in something really simple like index funds, some of them are really, really low expense ratios, like 0.04%, as opposed like even 0.7 for a target retirement fund.
Exactly.
At least this is based on what I know, what my experience were.
Yeah.
So check your funds in your retirement accounts or your accounts. Make sure that you understand expense ratios, because when you're starting, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. But imagine when you're in your retirement age, you're in your 60s, of course, all your savings for decades. If you've got, like, for example, $1 million there, and the expense ratio is 0.7 versus 0.04%, just imagine how much you're paying per year. That's really a big difference, right?
Yeah. What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Creating Wealth Podcast, where I, Kyle, from Kyle Curtin Real Estate, interview local top dogs in the real estate investing, wealth building, and personal finance industries. Let's build together. What's up, guys? This week's guest on the podcast has a really amazing story, from his initial discovery of personal finance to becoming a successful house hacker and real estate investor, and how it has changed his life so far. In part one of this two-part interview, Erick and I get to chat about a bunch of really cool topics, including his extraordinary story, first discovering personal finance, the things that they don't tell you about retirement accounts, and so much more. This episode was so much fun, and I hope you enjoy. Let's jump right into the episode. What's up, guys? Welcome to episode 68 of the Creating Wealth Podcast. Today, we get the great pleasure of chatting with Erick Sembrano, an absolutely awesome real estate investor, as well as a rehab doctor. What's going on, Erick? How are you, man? What is new?
I'm good, Kyle. Thank you. Good morning. It's exciting.
Good morning.
This one. This is gonna be great.
I'm very excited to have you on, my friend. This is awesome.
Thank you, Kyle. Yeah. Very appreciative to be here.
Thank you very much for coming on. Yeah, so to kind of jump right into things, man, what kind of got you into real estate? If you could kind of tell me a little about your backstory, like what kind of got you going?
Yeah, so basically, I grew up in the Philippines. I was born and raised there throughout from birth to medical school, basically. So I never really thought of leaving the Philippines and coming to the U.S. So after med school, lots of my classmates are going to the U.S. for training. So that's what I did too. So I signed up, studied for the boards, eventually got here in 2006 for training. So since starting med school in 1999, basically all my time is focused on medical school, medical stuff, training, call, post-call, pre-calls. Basically, I don't have much time, but that's what everyone's doing. My family's pretty much medical background, so having lived with parents that are both in the medical field, they're both doctors, so that's kind of the path that me and my brothers, all of us, kind of took, because that's kind of what was laid out in front of us when growing up. So got here 2006, so did training, traveled a few times all over the country in the US. So from North Carolina, I was there for 4 years, Miami for another year for another training. And I graduated 2011. Still no real estate or whatsoever. It's definitely not in my radar. So I was trying to get a job, but because of my visa, somehow I need to convert that so I could work here as a, what do they call that now? Working visa, right? So from training visa to working visa, somehow that process is always kind of murky and you don't know really how to go about that. So it took about a year and 3-4 months from training, from graduating to having an actual job.
Wow.
So I didn't have any job for more than a year. And that was a hard time because I was pretty much in a limbo and the timeline wasn't laid out for me. I didn't know it's going to take a year and like 3-4 months from graduating training to getting a job. So that was tough because I wasn't earning. It's a good thing my brother's around here in Minnesota. So he basically supported me throughout that year and a half. I've got a lot of friends, a few friends who helped me throughout the way. Stayed with one of my friends in Charleston for 6 months. I know we're not talking about real estate yet, but
That's okay.
I was in Charleston 6 months. I learned so much in terms of kiteboarding there. So my friend was a kiteboarder, one of the best time in my life. Still not working, just trying to learn kiteboarding at the beach in Charleston, South Carolina. So it's amazing. Still waiting for my job. So anyway, 2012 around fall, I got my first job in Minnesota, the university. So that's great. I was just waiting to start my job and just put my head down and just be a doctor, right? A rehab doctor.
Yeah.
So during that time, from a financial point of view, I got introduced to a financial advisor. Somehow I started my job. There was a financial advisor who said what they needed to say, said all the good things. One of my focus is, I don't know about finances. I don't know about retirement accounts. Now the university is presenting me with, well, you've got these options. You got retirement options, right? 401a, 403b, because they're an academic institution. Then you have a 457. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to manage those accounts.
Yeah.
And then this financial advisor, I asked them, like, can you help me with this and make sure I optimize this? Because I don't want to deal with it. I don't have time to deal with it, which is unfortunate because I was just trying to be the best young physician that I can, which took a lot of my time because you constantly are learning, right? There's a lot of growth. It's different from training. Now you're on your own. You still have your senior mentors, senior doctors in your department that you can ask questions, but you're basically literally on your starting pretty much, right? So I was with that financial advisor for about 4 years. And unbeknownst to me, they didn't really optimize my 401k, which probably in hindsight, they probably aren't able to. They just said yes to me and I just believed it. And I was not financially savvy enough to look at my accounts for that 4 years to figure things out that automatically right off the bat, I think I was contributing 2-3% to my retirement accounts.
Mm-hmm.
But in the Midwest, especially, at least as far as I know, they match you really generously. And I wasn't able to capitalize on that. So that's, I guess, well, opportunity cost loss, right? After about 4 years in the time that I was moving out of Minnesota and moving to Boston around 2017, that I probably had the time to look into my accounts and figure out, oh no, I wasn't contributing as much as I can.
Yeah.
I wasn't maximizing, like, how was the 403b at that time? 18,500 per year that you can put your money in, or 19,000. I don't remember exactly anymore. I was contributing really, really low. And that's the free money that they match your contribution is really, really low. And I basically fired my financial advisor. They're kind of useless to me. What they did actually for that 4 years is they encouraged me, and I signed up for, which is my fault, to invest in a whole life insurance, which is a whole different topic. For me, I shouldn't have done it. It wasn't the best for my situation to do it. Basically, what I put in for those 4 years is basically what I got out.
Yeah.
So just imagine all the compounding interest, opportunity lost there that it could have earned so much money that 4 years. I think it just went to them, to that company. So it was so bad when I kind of learned about that. That's also the time that I learned about personal finance. So I started listening to podcasts about personal finance. White Coat Investor, there's a podcast and a company by Dr. Jim Daly, White Coat Investor, which I learned so much about. How do I optimize my retirement accounts? What should I be doing? if I have extra savings from that, what should I be doing with that? From my situation where I need passive savings, right? Because I don't have time, I can't do any active investing, pretty much. And I don't know anything about finance. So I learned about investing in taxable accounts in index funds, which is probably the easiest set and forget type of stock investing. And it's probably really safe enough that it goes with the market, as far as to put it simply, right? That's how I understand it. Disclaimer, I'm not a tax advisor, I'm not a legal expert. Please, this is for entertainment purposes only. So that I say, take that with a grain of salt and consult your legal and tax professionals. So I learned that. When I moved to Boston for a new job, I actually live in Boston, Cambridge, and work in Salem, New Hampshire. So the drive commute is pretty much like 45 minutes, 15 minutes.
Yeah.
At least reverse traffic, which is great. So I had a lot of time listening to podcasts since 2017. For the entire year of 2018, my savings rate, I really focus on it. They recommend 20% savings rates for gross income, right? I was able to to save around 37% of my income. I was so pumped about that. I'm doing great. I cut down my expenses, and I was saving a lot. So I was able to not only maximize my 401k in my new job, but also was able to save a lot in my taxable accounts in Vanguard.
Yeah.
So I was so happy with that. And then after more than a year renting in Cambridge, this is the first time it happened to me that they want to increase my rent. Before, when I lived in North Carolina, Miami, Minnesota, it's the same rent year over year, given that I didn't need to move. I didn't need to stay there more than 2-3 years at a time. Yeah. So I just kept on moving, right? But during the 2-3 years in renewal, it's the same rent. So I was like, this is great.
This is perfect.
Right? Yeah, I know. And then in Cambridge, they want to increase my rent for like $200-$300.
This is BS.
Yeah, it's crazy. Given that, yeah, I know it's one of those luxury buildings. I was paying $2,400 for a studio apartment in Cambridge, plus parking, underground parking, because I don't want to deal with snow, shoveling and stuff, for an extra $250. So just imagine that. And then my rent went from $2,400 to $2,600+ per month that following year. I'm like, I need to do something about this. This is crazy. So that led me to, guess what? Biggerpockets podcast.
Hey.
Yeah, that's how real estate entered into my life. Like, I was driving back and forth for almost 2 hours a day, right? I listened to Biggerpockets for solid for like half a year, for 6 months. I'm like, I need to do house hacking, right? That's where the light bulb came in. I need to do house hacking in the city of Boston, right? So I went to an agent through Biggerpockets, and summer 2019 is when my first house hack. Mm-hmm. Still not knowing a lot of real estate. Really, I was so afraid of putting out my niche, my comfort zone, which is the medical field, right? Going to real estate and being buying my own property for the first time, which I'm like, oh, I don't know.
It's a little scary.
It is scary. My background, I don't know anything about houses. Growing up, if there's something wrong, my parents would just hire someone to fix it. Yeah. So I never learned anything. I was so afraid to just owning a house because I don't know anything about a house. Growing up, do you know anything, a lot about houses, how to fix things and stuff?
Nope.
Yeah, so same with me. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So just owning a house was scary. Acquiring a few units to rent out was scary. Don't know anything about that. Talking to managing tenants, don't know anything about that. landlording laws, don't know anything about
Nah.
that. So, but I want to jump in because I know this is the way to go. This what's right for me. This is gonna put me in a better position from a financial standpoint. Because I was focused on saving, decreasing my expenses, right? From renting 2,600 in Cambridge plus parking of 250. So that's how I started. I got a triplex, a 3-family in East Boston. That summer of 2019, I leveraged really my real estate agent's background experiences and network. She basically handheld me for the entire process because I don't know anything about what's happening. I just I learned a ton, learned a lot, right? And the first thing we did in the house was to install landlord mailbox inside apartment, right? Because the first thing I was thinking, how am I gonna get the checks? I don't want to go door knocking and asking for a check, right? So they need to put that in. One of the issues there is it's fully occupied, and the rents were like half of market rents.
Yeah.
And the house is super expensive. It's in East Boston. It's in Boston. So we purchased that house for 820, and the rents were like $1,000 each.
Yeah.
There's one paying 1,200 grand, which is still way below market. So just knowing now, like 1% rule, there's totally not even close. Probably not even half of that. So that was a scary time. So I need to ask someone to leave, right?
Yeah.
That's
Oh
when
boy.
I learned a ton about that. I was super scared, but yeah, it happened. I'm living there still. So that's how I got into real estate.
That's crazy, man. There's so much I want to unpack in there. Literally, like
Yeah,
that's like quite the story, man. Like going from, growing up in the Philippines and like, like going this like really traditional route, of like your parents being in the medical field and, same thing with like your brother as well. And like going through like all of this like really crazy education and like, going to like a whole nother country and like different places in that country. Like it just sounds like quite a crazy experience, of like just, going through all this stuff and like in completely different places. And um, that's absolutely amazing.
yeah,
And
it's scary time.
and like with the what's it called, with like the financial advisor stuff too, there's something I want to point out in there is like most people, just kind of follow that like traditional path of like, oh, like I don't want to deal with my money, like, I'm just going to go to this guy and like he'll tell me how to do it and like everything will be all right. And like that's just the norm. Like if this guy tells me to jump, like I'll jump, like, oh, like make as much money as I can. And like most people, like it's just normal like not to think twice about it, and like it's absolutely huge. And like, it might be huge for a lot of people out there, like you did. Like if you ever have some time to just kind of like, check things out and like see like, oh, like what am I like actually like putting my money into, like what are these returns looking like who is this going to? Because like most people don't know, and like you just kind of keep putting your money into it over and over and like, oh, and like retirement, like everything will be great, like putting all this money away. And even like you were saying, like something, um, like the match and stuff like that. Like a lot of people, they just like throw their money into like a 401k, like with work and stuff, and like, just don't think twice about it. But
Mhm.
like when things change is when you start to ask questions. And then like you said, you found out that like the match was absolutely crazy. And it's like, oh, like I wish I knew that like a couple of years ago, like it could have made a huge difference. But like most people just don't know. And like they could go, like 10, 20, 30, like 40 years without actually like, asking questions and like being able to, potentially make a significant difference in return, after like just kind of going with the flow and hoping for the best. Eric, I wanted to ask you, so with that, like the whole life insurance policy that you were in for a little bit, Was that part of like the infinite banking thing by any chance?
Uh,
Does that
I
ring a
think
bell at all, or?
I've heard of that. I'm not quite familiar with infinite banking. I think you bank yourself and you pay yourself. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was curious because like I was a part of one for a little bit, and like I know some people like really love it, and some people like really hate it and think it's really stupid.
Mhm.
And like I'm kind of caught in the middle.
Ah,
And like it just I think it's really interesting. Um, like the concept is really crazy. So guys, like essentially what it is, and like Eric said, I'm not a financial advisor or anything by any means either. We're just having fun, so take it as you will. But yeah, so like the way I kind of understood it was like basically you're buying like a whole life insurance policy, right? And it's something that like you put money into every month, like premiums and like paid up additions and stuff like that. And over time, like it'll take a while for it to actually start to build up a decent amount and then compound. It's kind of like investing in the stock market or really anything else that's influenced by markets. But the difference with this is it's completely independent from the stock market. And
mhm,
like it's just kind of like its own thing, and like building on its own and everything. And like Eric was mentioning, like the goal is to kind of like be able to like take loans and stuff from it, but the money stays in your account. So like, if you wanted to put like a down payment on a house or like, like fix like a roof or something like that, like something pretty significant,
mhm.
then, you're able to take money out of it, or take a loan out of it and then pay yourself back. So like it's not like you're, taking a loan from the bank or something like that. But yeah, it's the concept is crazy. And like some people really love it and some people really hate it. I personally couldn't really get into it that much, but
Yeah, I don't
that's
know
what I was
much about.
asking. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know much about that. Sounds like there may be some use for the right situation and right people.
Yeah.
I think there are so many tools out there, so many loan products or savings products or investment products. Everything is just a tool. You just need to make sure it's the right fit for you in your situation.
Exactly. Yeah, and that's
For
huge.
yeah, for that whole life insurance, just looking back, it wasn't the right thing for me to do at that time.
Mhm.
So I should not have done that. I think one of the concept is if you stay there really long enough, then it's might as well stay there for
Yeah.
many reasons. Or if you're really, really high net worth individual, that may be something for you to utilize. But for most people, probably not. But I I can only talk to for my situation. It wasn't the right thing for me to do at that time.
Yeah. And that's
Yeah.
tough, man, because like for me, I was putting in I think like $500 a month. And like in the meantime, like I was starting to, get into real estate and stuff. And I'm like, oh well, like I'd much rather just hold on to that $500 a month in my bank account, to start saving up for a down payment and this kind of thing. And I'm like, this is like cool. Like I like the idea, but I agree with you, man. Like I kind of realized like it wasn't really where I wanted to be right now. Like it didn't make sense for where I was, and the goals that I was trying to make in the short term and stuff like that. I mean, later on, who knows, but for now, like it didn't make sense for me. That's why I was curious. Like we've talked about it a couple times, like on the podcast, but like, it's something that's not talked about that often, and, like I said, like, some people, like, absolutely love it, like, it's the craziest thing in the world, and some people hate it a lot and think it's stupid. So it's kinda like it's an interesting, like, yin yang, like, balance kinda thing, and, like, it's it's interesting.
Yeah.
But, yeah, no, I feel like that's something that's pretty important, is to kinda have that self-awareness, especially when it comes to like where your money is going and being like, oh, well, like here are the goals that I have. Like, does it make sense for me to, keep going with this or, like just stop it and put my money into something else? And like that's something that's really big. Like even with like, like your 401ks at work and stuff like that. Like, if you wanna like if your company has like a huge match or something like that, yeah, I mean it's gonna make sense, depending on like where you're at. to like put in like the contribution that you want and like have to match like X amount and stuff. Or for your situation, like it might not. Who knows?
Yeah. So one of the things I learned in 401ks and retirement accounts is you actually need to manage them yourself and put them in I guess, invest it in something that you want.
Yeah.
And I thought it was done for you automatically, which it is. It has a default. uh, it has a default, I guess, what do you call it? An asset that they invest it in, right?
Yeah.
Some companies or some plans invest it in a retirement fund, right? It just auto rebounds itself throughout the years. Or I think many of them auto defaults it to a fund that's got a high expense ratio.
Yeah.
So over time, that's not probably the best thing, but you can probably do better if you learn more and you understand these things, that you can just change the settings and it invest in something that is better returns,
Exactly.
less expenses. So that's one of the things I learned when I looked into this 401k stuff and personal finance.
It's
Yeah.
huge stuff, man. It's like life-changing information. Like once you find it, it's like, oh, okay. Like it's definitely like an eye-opener like to everything. It's crazy. Especially like the expense ratios alone. Like you could be putting your money into like a 401k or like different investments and stuff, and the expenses that like it costs you, which I'm not 100% sure like what the actual like expenses are, but like basically I want to say it's like for the fund, like money that like the fund makes like to manage it or something like that, or like I don't know, it's something like that. But guys, like it's pretty much like an expense like that you have to pay like for owning the asset. Like I think it's like the price for them like managing it or something like that. Not positive, but yeah, it's and like most people don't know. Like it might be like a super crazy number, in the long run. Like it could be like, I don't know, like 2% or something like that. And like, like if you're making like 6 to 8, like, on average, like that could be a significant amount, over the course of your career.
Right. Yeah, it can really add up very well. Some expense ratio, I think, especially for active funds, are much higher. There's probably some fine print and hidden cost of asset management. I'm sure there's some fees there that it's not very easy to find.
Yeah,
But if you invest in something really simple like index funds, some of them are really, really low expense ratios, like 0.04%, as opposed like even zero point 0.7 for um, a, a target retirement fund.
exactly.
At least this is based on what I know, what my experience were.
Yeah.
So check your funds in your retirement accounts or your accounts. Make sure that you understand expense ratios, because when you're starting, it doesn't really make a whole lot of difference. But imagine when you're in your retirement age, you're in your 60s, of course, all your savings for decades. If you've got, like, for example, a million there and the expense ratio is zero point 0.7 versus 0.04%, just imagine how much you're paying per year.
It's
That's
insane.
really a big difference, right?
Yeah, I totally agree, man. And to transition a little bit into real estate, different kind of asset.
Yeah.
That's super cool, man. Like how you got started and like, just kind of jumping into something that was like completely different. Or actually, no, let me pedal back a little bit. Like the way you got into it, and just kind of like we're paying rent, for all this time. And like the culture shock of, like them wanting to raise the rent like a significant amount, like and just being able to like ask the question like, oh, like, is this it? Like, do I just, keep paying it? Like they keep, jacking the rent up and stuff like that. And like, that's it. Like, but no, it's like there's other options out there. You know what I mean? Like, and I think it was super cool, how like you looked into something completely different, and eventually found Biggerpockets and like use that commute time for podcasts. That's something that's absolutely huge. I love that so much. It's like whenever you're in the car, throw on like a podcast or an audio book or something like that and just kind of cruise to work and, just kind of like absorb like all the nuggets and stuff like that are in there. And I mean, like 2 hours, like collectively a day, man, like you could bang out like a lot of episodes in like a week,
Mm,
like that's
yeah.
nuts.
Yeah, that's one of my actually favorite parts of my day for so long. Podcast, because I learned so much. I guess going through what I've been through, it's always a growth mindset. You always need to learn and want to learn. It's part of me now. So I'm just going for everything I can learn, keep growing.
Of course. And like that's something that I really like about this kind of stuff too, man, is like the information is all out there. And
Mm.
like it's kind of up to you as an individual, like how much you want to learn and like how fast you want to learn it. And like it's just like it's all there, like books and podcasts and like YouTube videos and stuff like that. Like it's all there. Like it's all just like, how fast you want to pick it up and like how much you're like trying to absorb. And it's super cool.
Yeah, I learned so much online.
Yeah.
This day and age, really, you learn so much. And
It's
it's a lot
unbelievable.
of them are free.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And like it's absolutely crazy. And Eric, I wanted to ask, so with that first three family in Boston, obviously you were owner occupying it. Did you use like an FHA loan or something like that, or like a conventional, like did you have to owner occupy it?
Yes, we owner occupied it. I owner occupied it. During that time, it was just me,
Mm.
me and my then girlfriend, now wife, Kim, who's now living with me in that triplex. So I bought that with a low down conventional loan.
Gotcha.
So it was supposed to be around 5%, but with the purchase price, they capped how much they loan. So I ended up putting down about 70K, which is around 7-8%,
Uh-huh.
which is still low than
Yeah.
other products. So yeah, so that's how I financed that through my
Yeah.
savings. Basically, more savings. I've been saving a lot
Yeah.
since ever since, so that helped.
That's awesome. How has it kind of been like, from then to now, like turning over, like the tenants and the units and stuff like that, and like, getting those rents closer to market and closer to what you were paying in Cambridge?
Oh wow! Yeah, so the when I got the property in 2019, they were all under market rents, right?
Yes.
So one, I basically tried to renew what I can. There's two, I think that's month to month. One has a lease. So the lease one ended end of the year and they just left after that. So the other one, I want to increase to like 1,500 from 1,000, which is a lot of difference. So it can be a shocking, but they left after a month
Yeah.
or 2 months, 60-day notice. They just left. They decided they're just gonna find another place to rent. So that wasn't a problem. The other one gave me a problem.
Oh boy.
So they wanted to stay for another year paying below market rents, right? Because they have a kid and they're going to the school. Totally understand, right? I'm like, oh yeah, of course that makes sense. Yeah, they just started school. We want to be in the same system, right? Um, so I'm like, okay, but at least pay me a little bit more, so at
Yeah.
least it can cover some of my expenses because my mortgage is really high. So we kind of had that agreement when we talked, and then unbeknownst to me, there's actually a guy who lives there. Actually, they have the same name as the kid, as the child. So when I was looking at the Estepel and the other forms, I'm like, why is the name redundant? Uh, I
Yeah.
thought it was just that, and no one mentioned that there's a guy who lives there. The previous owner just basically said um, there's a lady there, a girl, and her kid. That's basically everything that I know. Of course, don't know anything. I didn't know how to really do my due diligence, and then that guy met me at the basement. I didn't even know he existed. One day after acquiring the property, when I was with a contractor, because I was trying to figure out what to do in my basement,
Yeah.
That wasn't a very good interaction. He was just I would just say, I think, really evil person, and I was super scared. So I tried to get them out,
Yeah.
and since I was, I basically got into I was fearful, right? I was scared.
Yeah.
I didn't know what to do, so I hired a lawyer for an eviction.
Hey, I don't blame you, man. Yeah.
We live in Massachusetts, right? It's not a landlord-friendly state, so
Uh-uh.
I didn't know anything about that too. So I tried to go there. Basically, told my lawyer, "Please help me. I need to get them out," because I was supposed to live in that building.
Yeah.
After that interaction, I was scared to live in that building. I'm like, I can't live there. I fear for my life,
Yeah.
right? So please, lawyer, please help me. So we went through the motions. Unbeknownst to me, I learned that it takes a real long time for an eviction process to go there. Of course, I stopped paying, and we filed the eviction, and they countered that eviction with other stuff. I don't know how to really explain that, but
Yeah.
from a legal point of view, I'm sure they have other ways to kind of counter whatever we're trying to do and just delay the process, which they can, I guess, more so in Massachusetts than other states. So it took a long time. That started, I think, October of 2019 when I got that. And then, um, and you know what happened in 2020, right? The pandemic came. Of course, we're still in the process. We haven't even got a court date. So basically, it boiled down to time and money, right? My
Yeah.
lawyer told me they're asking for this much money. We've been negotiating. They're asking for a ridiculous amount to get to leave, right? Things were shutting down. They want this amount of money. It's either pay them now before things shut down in March, or they'll just stay there indefinitely, and you don't know how long things are gonna get.
Oh boy.
The courthouses are closing, right? No one knows what's going on. They can stay there forever, and definitely, I needed the place to live because I've been extending my apartment in Cambridge month to month because my lease ended.
Yeah.
I I I wanted to own or occupy and live there, but with this situation, I was
Scared.
for safety, right? For safety
Yeah.
reasons, I tried to delay it until I get them out. So I paid them. Basically,
Yeah.
it was painful. It was a 1,500 grand lesson on top of lawyer fees, but they left.
Yeah.
They left after a week after I paid them. So after that, end of March, I moved in. I'm like, finally, I get to settle down and do house stuff, all
Yeah.
the repairs and upgrades I wanted to do. So when things shut down, I had a few months to kind of did what I did, um, paint everything, change all fixtures, repair gutters, paint and fix the front facade, the front door, the whole thing, change all the mailboxes, because um, put some lights at the back for safety reasons,
Yeah.
because there's no lights at the backyard. It was super dark at night. What else did I do? Um, yeah, so basically did those turnover stuff, make the place nicer, safer, and then we rented it over that summer to new tenants to market rents, which is great.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It is great. So that's kind of the best feeling I've had after that. Like finally, someone's paying pretty much my mortgage.
Yeah.
Because I was bleeding there for a long time, almost yeah, for several months, almost
Yeah.
a year.
That's crazy, man. Like you could even like just imagine, you know, like if you didn't have the money or something like that, or like, wanted to like go through the courts a little bit more. And like kind of, what we see now, like, post COVID maybe, and like how like backed up the courts are and stuff like that now. Like I wonder if they would literally, you know, because of how like delayed everything was, like still be living in there, today. And like if you were like still dealing with that problem and like they could have like destroyed everything. And yeah, I couldn't even imagine, man. That must have been a kind of a tough one to go through.
It was super stressful in my life. It's like from my background, I never want to go to courts. I never want to deal with all those
Yeah,
things. Um, it was really scary. It's a good thing I have a good W-2 job, so I can float that
yeah,
without much problems
yeah.
from a financial point of view, so that I can cover that with my job. But that was painful,
Yeah. And like,
obviously.
how do you do like due diligence against that? Like it's just like, oh, it's just this woman and her kid, and like, all of a sudden this guy shows up, like, hey, how you doing?
Oh my God! Yeah, sorry. When I met him at the basement, right? I tried to introduce myself and shake his hand. He never even shook my hand. It was just anyway. I'm not gonna go there.
Yeah,
Got over that. Yeah. So yeah, it was a stressful time in my life.
yeah. It's
Learned a lot.
interesting, man. Yeah, that's something that I'm like starting to kind of see a little bit. Is like to pay attention to like who's coming to your property often, and like like the cars that are coming in and out, and like just kind of seeing like who's around and like who's on the leases and stuff like that. And like, because it's gonna be, sometimes could be a little bit different than like what's on the lease, and like
Hmm.
just kind of seeing like, yeah, like who's going into like what you, yeah, exactly, like just like the who's coming in and out of like what units and stuff like that, and like the cars that are coming in and out, and the people, and like just kind of getting a feel for like the environment at a property, just to kind of see like what's in the norm, like who's kicking around, and like what's not in the norm, and like do I need to take action on anything. And like, yeah, it's definitely something that that's been a little bit of an eye opener, to me so far, is just kind of seeing, well, who's around basically.
Yeah, it's gonna be much easier when you house hack because you're pretty much there all the time. So
Yeah,
um, yeah, going through the process, definitely a lesson learned, especially in the state in Massachusetts. As much as possible, work it out with your tenants, right? Don't go the eviction route, cost time and money.
yeah,
Um, yeah, that's the biggest lesson I've learned. Try to work it out with your tenants as much as possible to come to an agreement, even if it costs you a few months.
yeah.
It's still much better than like half a year to a year. I've heard stories in Massachusetts that it can go that long, or even longer than
Exactly.
that. But yeah, it can really be costly. So
Yeah,
that's my biggest lesson learned there.
that's huge, man. That's super valuable. All right, guys, that concludes our Creating Wealth podcast episode for today. I want to thank every single person that has listened this far. It really means a lot to know that people can learn from me and with me as we build wealth together. Hopefully, you can take home at least one thing from this podcast that will improve your life just a little bit. If you could, please check me out on social. That's at Kyle Curtin Real Estate on Instagram, Facebook, and I'm on Biggerpockets. Until next time, let's build together.